SCRIPTING. I spelled it out so I don't get banned. Much like Bigfoot, the moon landings and the assassination of JFK, scripting, momentum or handicapping if you prefer has been a hotly contested conspiracy for a very long time. There are so many angles to this, many opinions and misconceptions, so it seems like a good idea to take them one by one and just have a little chit chat about them really. It's not an investigation and I'm not going to come to a definitive answer for you. I just want to present the evidence and triggers with a touch of opinion on each point and let you draw your own conclusions before you head to the comments to scream at each other or me for being wrong. That's fine, I can't stop that happening, but at least watch the whole video before you do that, yeah? Also, familiarise yourself with the term devil's advocate. Done all that? On we go then. My aim here is to understand scripting as a term because different people have different takes on what it is and what it does, or if in fact it even exists, and that's what makes the idea of scripting so unique. No one really knows, apart from the development team of course, who firmly deny its existence, but we'll come back to that. So, many different people with many different ideas, opinions and experiences have all assembled under one umbrella, and the general idea is that there is a system in place in FIFA to level the playing field somewhat, be that to close the gap between teams when there's a wild difference in strength and even things up, something that's apparently particularly noticeable when using legends or team of the season or team of the year players to boost a player that's on a bad run, or wilder still, to rein in the guy that's on a hot streak. Whoa, buddy, stop winning so many matches, eh? Seriously, it's been suggested. Before we get too deep into where we are now, let's have a little revision on the history of this wonderful enigma. I first became aware of the term throughout FIFA 09. I was a heavy EA forum user then, and that led to me being witness to hundreds, maybe thousands of posts that mentioned some form of handicapping. That's what we called it then, not scripting, handicapping. The idea wasn't that the game was conspiring against you, but that it was leveling the playing field. It's evolved over time, and now the term scripting is used to describe multiple issues by the looks of things. Handicapping and momentum are still used, but mostly in the name of describing the S word. Everyone has their own idea of what it is, but it largely boils down to the game won't let me win. That's perhaps a touch reductive, but essentially that's where the complaints come from. You feel like you weren't able to win a match for reasons outside your own ability, be that because your team played poorly and couldn't put two passes together, or because the other dude's team was untouchable, or both. It doesn't matter. The feeling is the same. I'm sure most of us have been on runs, even short ones, where you feel completely untouchable. I calmly brushed aside this team with a very average squad by comparison. His superstars made mistake after mistake, allowing me a pretty routine and stress-free win, and one that raises a couple of questions. Firstly, just because this guy or girl had a great team and mine was average, does that immediately entitle them to the win? Of course not. Secondly, just because his players were upgraded versions of already quality players, does that mean that every touch should be perfect and no mistakes should be made? Again, no. In addition to that, the huge wave of coin buying issues last year allowed even the very worst player to quickly obtain a team filled with stars. A team like this is not an indication of your opponent's quality. Anyway, it's a widely talked about issue, and one that led to EA banning accounts that were using the S word on their official forums and actually rewriting the forum rules to warn people just how badly they didn't want you talking about it. If EA is certain that it doesn't exist, then why are they so against it being talked about? Maybe the forum mod's tired of having to restate the fact that it doesn't exist over and over and over. Maybe they didn't want people reading about other people's scripting experiences and then starting to think they were experiencing the same thing in some weird sympathy pain type situation. Maybe they just got sick of the 9 million duplicate threads with the same people documenting the same experiences over and over and over, although that in itself lends a bit of weight to the idea that something's not quite right. After enough community noise, EA took a firm stance and came out with a flat denial. As far as they're concerned, it's not in the game, and clearly all the continued talk pissed them off a bit as they later took what could be seen as a swipe at those that believe in scripting in the TV ad.
You just can't write scripts like this.
And in this little slice of in-game commentary, which ironically plays here after a goal from kickoff.
We hear a lot about momentum, don't we, these days? Well, that goal has got the momentum back with this team that are title contenders, and one more might be enough to win them the title even this early in the season.
So what evidence is put forth by those that firmly believe scripting's existence? Starting at the beginning, a document from 2007 written by FIFA producer Sebastian Enrico, who incidentally is still on the FIFA team right now, is referenced, with certain quotes being pulled out, even though largely speaking he was talking about the potential to have things like fans booing affect player performance and so on. How much of what he talked about was actually implemented into FIFA, we just don't know, but let's not forget that was a long time ago, and 2 engines ago. Those ideas were slightly reused later as part of the ominously named, at least for someone who believes in scripting, Emotion Engine. The Emotion Engine is not, however, used to affect attributes or gameplay in any way, and is instead used to drive things like crowd reactions and deliver the right cutscenes at the right time. So then came UEFA 2008 Euros, which actually did have a momentum system. Yep, for reals. Even EA acknowledged that they were experimenting with the ideas of emotion affecting gameplay around this time, which did things like reducing or boosting fatigue, which actually can affect stats. The code was still present, although deactivated in FIFA 09, and in FIFA 10 it was deleted altogether as EA sought to put the whole idea that their game wasn't 100% fair to bed. Next in the timeline, I guess, would be the Madden 09 TV advert, something that caused EA to have to address the scripting thing all over again. The Madden TV ad basically said in black and white that Madden had systems in place to balance a match between an experienced player and a new one. Naturally, it isn't a huge jump to think that such systems could exist in other EA Sports titles. Here it is.
Let's just say you have somebody like myself who's been playing Madden ever since it came out. And then you have somebody like my daughter who's 8.
Which special teams?
Let's just say she throws an interception where like I saw her coming a mile away. Good tackle. The computer compensates for what she lacks, maybe defensively. Who taught you how to do that? She won't get any wins though against me. I'm not having it.
And then there was also the FIFA 09 guide, which spoke of momentum shifts making players slower or more prone to mistakes. The way it's worded made it look like those shifts would last minutes in game rather than entire matches, and it didn't note what caused them. EA's response was that they didn't write the guide themselves, but they had it written by 2 contractors that either made mistakes or misunderstood certain things they'd claimed in the guide.
We actually hired a couple of guys to come in and write a FIFA guide for our fans, an in-depth look at the game, and some of it they came to us for and learned some of the finer details of the game, and then they were tasked. Obviously we don't have a whole lot of time because we're busy building the game every day, and it takes the majority of our lives, let alone our working lives, but to be able to write an extensive guide like that, we don't have time, so we hired 2 guys to come in. As part of it, they took our direction on certain things that we wanted to see in their guide, but we kind of gave them creative license to go away and write what they felt were good tactics that you could use and things that they saw in the game that they thought were like a good way for you to be able to play the game and succeed. And you know, they like to play the ball out wide and get across it, and this is how they like to score, and add that little bit of external color for the piece that they were putting together. So they had a little bit of creative license, but I think they overstepped it a little bit here because they were claiming that something was in the game that actually wasn't there. And as I mentioned from the answer to the previous question, we took it out of FIFA 9 and we disabled it. And in fact, I believe in the following year they did it again. The same line was in the next guide the year after, and we had to have the conversation again because it's totally just not true. It's just flat out they made an error.
Other evidence used by people that believe in scripting include entries from the game's database, like this one labelled Match Intensity, which people suggested was confirmation that some kind of naughtiness was hidden away. EA have said that this entry is in reference to the intensity of the crowd, which will partly be raised or lowered by the occasion, i.e. is it a cup final? Given that entry sits between no attendance and big attendance in the database, I'm inclined to believe them. Occasionally a chat log like this one will surface, and a poor unwitting first-line support agent for whom English is likely a second language is held up as someone that can unquestionably confirm the existence of such a controversial mechanism. People always claim that EA support are total shit, unless of course they say something like this, then suddenly they're geniuses and couldn't possibly be wrong. Stats are another interesting talking point, with people posting a match result where despite peppering their opponent's goal with shots, they have very few goals. Conversely, their opponent has taken just one shot and scored it, just to add insult to injury. Now, I'm not dismissing this entirely because we've all seen clips where the ball hits the post far too often, rattling off the bar, rattling off the post, bouncing off the keeper, never going in despite it being right on the goal line. But I would like to point out that at the end of a match, this shot is still +1 on the shot tally, in the same way that this one is. What if all 13 shots were taken with the player off balance, or being closed down, or with his 2-star weak foot? The numbers at the end of a match aren't the full picture. Then there's 45th minute and 90th minute goals. This one's fairly easy to understand. On occasion, the sheer wealth of goals scored in the 45th minute or 90th minute looks a bit over the top. Firstly, those minutes are longer than any other minute in the game. That's just blindingly obvious. And then when you throw in potential tactical changes, desperation in some cases, and panic in others, not only have you got a recipe for goals, but that recipe is being baked in an oven with a stopped timer, and seasoned with the fact that the logic for when to actually end a match has been absolutely terrible for a very long time. Players making horrendous mistakes defensively is something else that's given as evidence for scripting. The problem with YouTube evidence is that beyond a few very extreme examples, a lot of it's subjective. You don't actually know what the person holding the pad is pressing. Now, there's no denying that in this clip in particular, something's very, very wrong, but is it evidence that EA are having a say in the result? It looks bad. Like, it looks really, really bad. But if EA were trying to affect the outcome of a match, they'd surely need to be a little bit more subtle than that. You'd like to think it's a glitch, rather than proof of something more sinister. I'll hold my hand up to thinking that was total bullshit as something plays out in real time when I'm playing FIFA, only to realise that it was actually pretty accurate when I watched the replay. But more often than not, these examples surely boil down to being dodgy programming rather than dodgy intentions. Think of how many times player switching's let you down. Whether that leads to a goal or not, how many times have you struggled to switch to the player that you want to control? Is that because the wrong player is being chosen on purpose to make you lose? Or is it because the player switching is just not very good? All this naturally brings us to why. If some system for balancing exists, why would EA feel the need to put it in there? The obvious answer is to keep people playing, or more importantly, to keep the casuals happy. If you were getting steamrolled every single time you went online, you'd get fed up pretty fast and start playing something else. And EA want you playing FIFA, buying FIFA points, and then buying FIFA again next year. Of course they do. They're a business, but could they go as far as messing with results to keep things interesting? That seems like a stretch even for the most sinister of organisations. I've even seen it suggested that they handicap you to make you buy more packs in search of better players, but that obviously completely contradicts the idea that teams like this are also handicapped to stop them being good. Like, where's the middle ground there? So what about communication from EA on the matter? In 2012, we were able to pose some questions to one of the gameplay producers, Aaron McCarty, all on the topic of momentum. So we pulled together the biggest talking points regarding scripting and posted them across the internet to Canada, where Aaron sat down and read through our questions and answered each one. I'll leave a link to the whole thing below, but with so many voices screaming pretty much the same thing, then surely there must be something at work within the game here, right? EA basically said no. Aaron notes that after a large wave of scripting chit-chat on various forums and the uproar at the Madanad, EA performed what they called a code audit in 2010, where they set development time aside to properly search for the cause of the community's problems, and they concluded that there was no longer any code in the game from the previous things mentioned that would cause the symptoms people described, and instead offered their own reasoning for some of these feelings. As for my own experiences, I'm one of the lucky ones. I never really feel like I'm being handicapped or cheated or hindered. I have, however, definitely played matches that felt all too easy. EA are naturally absolutely adamant that there's nothing in the game, and that stance has never wavered, but it's something that's still on their minds clearly after all this time though. I'll leave you with some words from creative director Matthew Pryor speaking very recently in the run-up to FIFA 16.